All right. Well, welcome. Like I mentioned, I'm Macy Silva, the HR branch manager, and our topic today is clock in and class up. It's time management for our interns who do it all. And we know it's a lot to be an intern. You're in school. You're also, managing a job and hopefully a social life, right? Somewhere in there. And so we thought this is a great opportunity to share um, some tips, some strategies that can help you build some habits that can really help you in all of these areas. I kind of mentioned our format already. We'll talk about what is time management, go over some strategies, and do some kind of practice and build some habits that stick. So what is time management? So it's the process of planning and organizing how you divide your time. The goal is to spend an adequate amount of time on your specific activities to be more efficient and effective. A pretty straightforward definition. It involves balancing all of your different responsibilities, making sure you're setting priorities, and then allocating your time wisely so that you can set and meet deadlines. As interns, good time management means being able to juggle school, work, and personal life without feeling so overwhelmed, and then also achieving all of your different goals. But why is time management so hard? And it's not just hard when you're an intern. It's not just hard when you're starting your career. It's hard for people at all different levels of the career or seasons of life. So what I'd ask from you, if you'll put an emoji in the chat of something that represents why you think time management is hard. I'll give y'all a minute to do that. Y'all are giving me 0 emojis. There we go. A lot of different book schedules, need time to sleep and rest. Yeah. School, a lot of school. Yeah, depending on what school you're in and what you're working towards right now, you don't always have a lot of control over your school schedule. Sometimes just a busy calendar. Yeah, making time for health as well, personal health and well-being. All of it maybe makes you a little crazy. I like that one. Yeah, you want time for faith and your religious activities too. Maybe commuting is part of the problem. I'll vote on that. I'm based in the Dallas area, and everything's under construction, like many areas. So yeah, so those are some good ones. Um, as an intern, you do have some particular challenges that are specific to being an intern. So you have conflicting deadlines. Maybe that's school assignments versus work tasks, for example, or maybe that's also personal things that you have going on that you need to get done. And you have two major life events going on at the same time. So you're working and you're having to focus on school. So that means your energy and your time is split. And we all only have 24 hours in the day. And being committed to these two major things on top of just regular life means the amount of effort you can allocate to each is kind of limited. You also have pressure to succeed both in school and at work at the same time. You're expected to do well in both places. And in both places, you are in a learning environment. Even at work, you are learning constantly, right? And all of that takes a ton of energy in itself. Also, your days are inconsistently structured. So as an intern, you might work certain days, or maybe you're splitting days between school and work if you're working part-time. Some of you get the luxury to be able to work full time and have a little bit of consistency there. But on top of that, with school, you have different homework assignments, you have projects due at different times, then you throw in exams scattered throughout your semester, your schedule. You'll need time to study for those. So there's not a lot of consistency when it comes to that and your work schedule. So it does make it extra challenging to put together a routine that can bring ease to your life. So that's why we're talking about this today. So some strategies you can use are using a planner or digital calendar. My recommendation is to use one single calendar. So that, again, maybe that's a book or physical planner or some type of digital calendar like an Outlook or Google Calendar to track all of your classes, your assignments, your work shifts, meetings, deadlines. So all of it put in one calendar. A lot of times, I know I like to do this. I kind of want to compartmentalize my life where it's like, okay, all my family stuff here, all my work stuff here on this calendar, and maybe like other stuff with friends, I'm going to put on this calendar, kids' sports and school stuff. And what happened to me was I started double booking or mismanaging my days or times because I was not overlapping all these calendars. I didn't have them in one place. And I could really easily see, oh, at work, I only have this going on. Then at home, I'd book all these things and not be able to get to them because I booked myself to travel at work or whatever it was. So it's really important to, even if you use separate calendars, take time to overlap them and see what else going on. You also can plan weekly, but adjust daily. So I would advise that you pick a day where you routinely, like maybe every Sunday or every Monday, you plan your week out, right? And we know life isn't perfect, so things change. So if you plan the week out, you can get a good feeling for what you have to or what you have to get done, which can help you prioritize. And we'll talk about that in a second. And then each day you can check what did you have on your plan and how do you need to adjust that. So maybe you got something done earlier than you expected or something got canceled, so you can adjust that time each day you review. So one thing I do is every morning, the first thing I do is review my calendar for the day and the rest of the week. And I make adjustments as needed. And I also do this on a monthly basis. I look ahead at the next month. What do I need to adjust? What do I need to add, etc. You also could consider on your calendar designating some no work or no school times on your schedule just to ensure you have some time to recharge or to build in what I call like buffer time. Like maybe you will have something come up, but you have time to do it. So you have some blocked buffer time. But mainly you want to have some time that's to yourself, that's not school, not work, maybe even not social. It's just nothing so that you have that recharging time so you can live your life. You also might consider using tools, especially like at work, like Planner, where you can create buckets of different tasks. So basically you can categorize your task. And you can do this even on a whiteboard or maybe on paper too. I personally use a big old whiteboard in my office. And so all the different types of projects I have or categories of tasks, I put them on there and then due dates as well. So color coding works really well if you create some type of bucket or task list based on categories. And then sounds simple, but set yourself reminders. So maybe that's in a digital calendar, maybe that's on your phone. Maybe that's in another tool, but definitely set reminders for yourself. The next strategy is to make sure you're prioritizing tasks. So there are some different methods you can use. One is the Eisenhower matrix. The other is the ABC, or you might have heard it called must, should, could. You can definitely look into these more if you're interested. But basically, both of these are things that allow you to plot what's really urgent, what's important, what is both urgent and important, or is neither, what can you put off for later kind of thing. So they're both great strategies you can use just to help you prioritize your work. And as an intern, the best advice I can give you, if you're not sure, especially at work, just ask. Ask your supervisor, your lead worker, whoever you normally get your tasks from. Ask them to help you prioritize if you're not sure. And as a manager myself, I'd much rather give guidance on what to prioritize than have, one of my interns working on something that's not a high priority or feeling overwhelmed or they're struggling to manage their time. So don't be afraid to ask what to prioritize. The next strategy is something called time blocking. Anyone ever heard of this? You can put your hand up if you have. Right? Couple people. So this one is one that I've started using maybe in the last 2-3 years more than before because it's a really great strategy that works well for me. But basically, you just identify what tasks that you really need focus time on and block that time. And you can color code. I like to color code or code it however you want, but make sure that you're not overlapping any work. And so I know, at least for me, I always heard growing up, you have to be able to multitask, multitask, multitask. But now we know, and there's evidence that multitasking isn't always the best way to get things done. And sometimes you really do need that blocked focus time. So by time blocking, you can pick a task and set that on your calendar where that's the only thing you're going to do for that time. So maybe you need 30 minutes, maybe you need an hour. Some of the things I do, I need a couple hours. I can't always block all that time. But you do that in a set schedule so that you make sure you're getting done what you need to and have that focus time. So be realistic when you time block of the time you need. Like I said, know if you need 30 minutes, know if you need an hour, 2 hours, etc. And then schedule those throughout your calendar. When I had to do a lot of filing, for example, I would block time on my calendar each week. I think I did it like on Fridays, like every Friday for like 2 hours. All I would do is filing because I needed a lot of focus time for that and uninterrupted time. Otherwise, my pile would get bigger and bigger and bigger. So scheduling time blocks like that really helped me to make sure I got some tasks done, right? And during that focus time, you want to maximize it. So there is something called the Pomodoro technique. This is kind of a neat one, but this would be something you'd use maybe for studying or maybe a project that, like an audit project that's going to take a long time. And what you do is basically set a timer for 25 minutes, and you're only going to do that for 25 minutes. And then when your timer goes off, you take a 5-minute break. So you either truly take a break or you maybe answer a couple emails real quick or do something that's not related to the task at all. So again, whether that's studying or a big project at work. And then after that, you set another timer for 25 minutes and you repeat that cycle a couple of times. I think in the technique, it says to do it 4 times and then you take an even longer break and then you can go back to it. But that is a way to really set yourself up for success and work in these small time chunks to get a long project or a lot of studying done. You also, if you're at work, set your statuses to do not disturb. If you're at home and you're studying or wherever you're studying, put your phone on do not disturb or your computer or whatever chat, whatever y'all are doing these days. Put those on do not disturb. And you also might consider noise canceling headphones. If you're at work, you do need to check with your lead or supervisor if you can have those just for safety reasons. But you might be able to put in some earpods or at least one or headphones depending on your circumstances. Just check with your supervisors at work for that. The next strategy is to set boundaries. And this is one I really talk about with my own direct reports and employees, because this is a great way to manage your time. Once you're clear on your priorities and your due dates and deadlines, you have to balance that time for both of them. And sometimes that just means saying no politely or professionally. So at work, that might sound like in the I'd love to work on that project in the future, but I'm focused on XYZ project already. Is that something I can take on next week or next month? Maybe in your personal life, it sounds something like, hey, thanks for inviting me, but I have to study this week. I've got a test and I'm working. So could we hang out maybe next weekend? So don't feel like you have to say yes and be committed to everything somebody offers, whether it's at work or at home. Make sure you're also protecting some of your personal time. I mentioned that a little bit earlier. You need time for yourself to take a break, but you also need time for your social life and your hobbies and your rest. So if you watch the stress management presentation, the recording's out there, you can really learn about rest and why that's important. But burnout happens when you don't take time to recharge on that personal side. You also want to ensure you're planning for some downtime. We mentioned that earlier as well. Build that buffer in case something comes up or it's taking you longer to get something done than expected. If you book everything back to back to back on your calendar, you don't have any buffers and you start getting behind. You may get behind because things start to run over. And, have you ever gone to a doctor's office and you wait 30 minutes to see the doctor, even though you were there on time for your appointment? And that's when they book back to back, right? So you don't want that to happen in your life as well. And be honest with yourself and know how many hours you can realistically commit to at work without sacrificing school or well-being, especially during the spring and fall semesters. I know a lot of you are working part-time, and so it's important not to overcommit to work. We're glad you're here. We want you here, but we also want you to do well in school. That's your first priority, and you're learning while you're here, right? So we want you to do well first. And then the next strategy is just make sure you're communicating with your supervisor or your lead, again, whoever you're mainly reporting to. So like anything, communication's key. Make sure you have clarity on your expectations of your priorities at work, especially when it's important, or sorry, it's important when you're transitioning between full-time and part-time. So many of you may have been full-time this summer and you transitioned to part-time in the fall, and maybe your work hasn't really changed. So you might want to check in with your supervisor to say, hey, what are the priorities? I was here 40 hours a week. Now I'm only here 10. What is it you really need me to get done in these 10 hours? Right. So if you haven't had that conversation, consider asking that question. Also talk to your supervisor about exam dates or major project deadlines or different school events you might have. It's fine to request off time or maybe ask for an altered shift one week just because, maybe there is an exam and you can't work that Friday, but now you could, work Wednesday when you didn't normally. So do that as much as in advance as possible. Typically, supervisors like to say 1 to 2 weeks. That helps us schedule and manage our teams. But, as much as in advance you can do that as possible is always helpful at work. As a part-time intern, it's also a great idea to make sure you remain visible and check in with your leader supervisor on the different work you're doing. So maybe if it's a project or it's tasks that you're getting done, just let them know, give them a quick update on what you've completed, where you're at, what you're going to be starting on. If you need to continue working on something or an extended deadline, let them know. Again, we know, especially those that transition to part-time, we know school is your first priority. So just having that open dialogue and communication about your work helps us manage the work as well. And then if you do need to switch your schedule or you need a different project or whatever it is, offer those solutions to your supervisor. Most supervisors are going to be open to that discussion, especially if you bring a solution to it. So maybe, again, it's something where you're offering to alter your schedule. Say, I can't work Thursday and I normally work Thursday, but instead I could work Friday. Or could I have someone else cover my shift or work on this project for me because I'm not going to get it done because I'm focused on XYZ. So just having those conversations are going to help you protect your time. All right. So you're going to put your answers in the chat. We're going to build some habits that stick in just a minute. Sorry. Just if you do want to make changes for yourself or use any of these strategies, start small. Use 1 to 2 of these strategies at a time. See what works well for you. If you try to implement everything, you might have some failures. It's a lot to try to change at once. But also take time to reflect on what works well for you and what doesn't. And then celebrate your wins over perfection. Again, none of us are perfect at time management, and we are all still working on it as your career progresses, as your seasons of life change. You'll always be working on your time management. So now we're going to do some practice, and you'll put your answers in the chat. So, and I'll also preface this with, there's no wrong answers. This is for you to reflect and think about what would work well for you with your school, with your life, and your job, right? So first one is you have a class project due tomorrow and a work task your supervisor just asked for you by the end of the day. You only have 1 more hour scheduled of work and could possibly stay an extra hour. However, you must also get home to finish your class project. What strategy might you use? All right, we got 1C, set a boundary and leave work at your scheduled time. Okay, a couple people say C. Got a lot of B's in there, a BC combination. Okay. I like that. Yeah, I think either is fine. Just make sure you are setting those expectations. The ABC method is more about prioritizing, so it may not be the best option here, and y'all seem to grasp that. So great job. The next one, you're scheduled to work 20 hours this week, but you also have 2 exams and a group project due. You're feeling overwhelmed. What strategy would you use? All right, I saw 1A in there. Someone will better schedule their week. A couple people saying A. Great. I love that. And then a lot of you said you would request to adjust your hours. Maybe seeing who else could help cover your work. I think that's a great idea. You're bringing a solution to your supervisor. Sometimes we can't adjust our hours, right? And maybe we're dependent on that check and the amount of money we're getting. So not working really isn't an option. So you do need to find an option that works for you. Great. The next one, you have 10 small tasks on your to-do list, things like emails, prepping for meetings, data entry, organizing files, but you're not really sure where to start. What strategy would you use? Yeah, ABC or must, should, could. I love that strategy. Eisenhower matrix is also great. Uh-oh, where'd my PowerPoint go? Sorry, guys. I hope I'm still on the call. Can y'all hear me and see my PowerPoint? Okay, thanks. Thanks, Josh. All right. Moving on to the next one. All right, you're asked to attend a last-minute meeting at work, but you plan to work on a task with an approaching deadline during that same time. What strategy would you use here? Lots of C's. Yeah, ask. Ask if you need to be there. Yeah, depending on the meeting, maybe your interest in it, you might figure out how to reschedule your time if you're able to do that. I did put A as an option, and I'm not going to say it's wrong, but I would hope if you're going to use that approach, you do have a conversation with your lead or supervisor before you just set your status on do not disturb and don't show up. As a just professional advice is always ask before you do something like that. But great. Well, thank y'all for participating. Hopefully that gave you some time to reflect on what would work well for you. As you can see, we have lots of different interns and different positions and roles here, and y'all had different answers. So there isn't one right way to manage your time effectively. It's what way works best for you. So that is the end of our presentation here. I'm going to stop the recording.